Hey everyone, welcome back to ONYX Pages. I'm very happy to be here recording. I'm so grateful to have this platform to talk to you about things bookish and Black and speculative and everything. So I'm recording this in the beginning of July. It has been about 3 weeks since I've recorded any content, and I've been talking to myself, to Tommy, to my friends, saying, oh my gosh, I miss it, I miss it, I miss it. And I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it. And here we are. It is a rainy day, which is giving me a lot of momentum to I'm not going to lie, I want to go out, but also I want to be here and I want to talk to you. So I'm glad to be here. Very grateful. Thank you very much for watching. And in particular, thank you to those who have just found this channel. So welcome to ONYX Pages. And for those who are returning, I'm really happy to see you. I hope you really enjoy this video. So on to what this video is about. This is a video that I have wanted to record for some time, and it is about my approach to reading short story collections and anthologies. So if you are curious about how I read with purpose and my unique way of approaching short story collections, then this is definitely the video for you, and I will see you in 2 seconds to get into it. Welcome back, glad you stayed. Okay, before I get started, if you are not subscribed to this channel, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe and if you would hit notifications so that you can get more videos. I am going to be talking to you today about my approach to reading short story collections. I'm going to start off with a little bit of history. So I have always gravitated towards short story collections. Even if I think about reading as a child and as a young adult, I remember enjoying the variety that you could get in these collections. It was a really good way to read on theme, but to not get kind of fully invested in a very long story, right? So if I was having like a short attention span moment, especially if I was traveling and would only be able to read in short spurts of time, and I knew I wouldn't have the sustained attention that it requires to read a whole book, I would turn to short story collections. In my later years, so as in my sort of current phase of reading, I turned to short story collections for a number of reasons. So one, I might want to explore a particular theme. And if I want to explore that theme and I'm not sure who to read, getting a short story collection can help expose me to a number of writers within that particular theme or within that particular subgenre, so that I can decide whose writing I like, whose themes I'm interested in exploring, and it's a really nice way to kind of get me in to a new theme. So for example, and maybe I'll do some editing magic here, but as an example, last year, sort of towards the latter part of last year and now, I'm pretty interested in Black horror and speculative horror in particular. And so I have purchased a number of short story collections that are connected to that genre or subgenre. So there's the Jordan Peele collection of short stories called Out There Screaming. There's also the horrors from the Sati-verse as well, and I think there's a third one, which is the Black Girl Survives in this one, and those three collections, short story collections, are examples of collections that expose you to the subgenre, but that have a lot of different writers. And it was a way for me to not have to commit to one whole novel or a whole series of horror books, but to give me a bit of a lay of the land. So that's one of the reasons why I like to read short story collections. I also like to read short story collections because If I don't have a ton of time, they're easy to put down and pick back up. They're easy to read on commutes, and they can be super fun. So right now I'm reading a short story collection, and this one is As the Earth Dreams. It's Black Canadian speculative stories, and it was edited by Therese Mason-Pierre, who I've interviewed on this channel before. And I got this, I think this came out in the fall of 2025, I want to say, 2025. And I was very excited to see this collection because we have a lot of incredible established and also emerging writers in Canada, in Toronto where I live. And I want to hear more from them. I want more opportunities to read their work. And you all, right, the majority of the subscribers to this channel, you live in the United States, and you all need to be exposed to Black Canadian speculative writers. There is a unique perspective that that these writers bring, and this collection tickled my fancy because when I looked through it and when I saw who contributed to this volume, I got very excited. A lot of names I recognize, a few that I didn't recognize and was excited to be exposed to, so I picked this up. So it is a pretty short, I think it's not even 200 pages. Yeah, it's like 171 pages. I've read all but 2 of the stories in this volume, and I thought as I was reading this and as I kind of got into what some might think is a peculiar approach to reading the collection, I thought, you know what, I actually do want to do either a series of videos or one video on how I read short story collections with this as an example. Okay, so I'm going to take you through what I do when I get a short story collection, and some of these tips, actually have come from my academic reading, and others have come from necessity, right? So let me know what you think of this process. I'm actually really curious because I don't think I've talked to anybody really about this. I don't think I've put this out anywhere. So I'd be interested in your thoughts. So if you're at this point in the video and you have your own practice of how you approach reading short stories, I would love to hear it in the comments. Okay, so because I have a large collection of Black speculative fiction, as you can see behind me, it often takes me a while before I get into what I'm going to read, right? There's often months or years between purchasing a book and actually reading it. I'm a mood reader, so I might be in one mood when I buy the book and then another mood when I actually read it. So I got this sometime last year. All right, so I picked this up about a month ago, and all I remembered was that this was a collection of Black speculative stories. So the first thing that I do when I read a short story collection is I read, like I look at the cover, and this is gonna be so granular. Okay, I look at the cover, and I look at the image on the cover, and I try to think about what it is and why it's there and what it means to me, right? I like cover art, and I feel like cover art, not only is it supposed to be eye-catching, but it's supposed to give you, in my view, a sense of what is in store. So the first thing that I notice about this cover is that it's got a bee on it. It's got 3 main colors, right? It's got what I like, peacock colors, right? So it's got that fuchsia purple, it's got that turquoise, it's got white and blue. And all of these like squiggles. So I'm like, okay, there's gonna be like, it's multi-dimensional. We also know that, I think this is a bee. It might not be a bee. Actually, yeah, it might be a bee. But I associate this insect with being a bee. And I'm like, bees are important. They make honey. They are, they're becoming more scarce and they need to be protected. And I thought, you know, that's really interesting, because that's how I feel about Black Canadian speculative stories. Who knows if that's what they meant by the cover art, but that is definitely what I associated with the cover. So I look at the cover, I remind myself about why I bought the book. I start to get excited, build a little bit of dopamine looking at the cover. Then I read the back. And I read the back because I want to know how the collection was marketed and what the collection is designed to do, right? So since I'm going to be introducing you to this book, I'll actually read the back. So this is a groundbreaking anthology of haunting stories by Black Canadian writers. So I am expecting that there will be something maybe spooky, something maybe like kind of weird, Twilight Zone-y in this collection. So edited by esteemed poet Therese Mason-Pierre, this bold and innovative anthology of speculative short fiction reveals and uplifts the spectacular imaginings, reveries, reflections, experiments, and hopes of Black writers in Canada. A masseuse attends her mother's 4th funeral, only to encounter family she's never met. A postdoc instructor navigates an almost life in an elsewhere realm of safety and comfort. After societal collapse, an immigrant leaves her precarious station and her memories behind. A woman isolating from a new virus starts hallucinating. A young nanny accepts a job with a peculiar employer in search of immortality. A medium is tasked with summoning a spirit that hits too close to home. And 2 teenagers test a friendship over magic carpet flying practice. These 10 breathtaking stories explore natural and urban landscapes, living and dead relationships, economic catastrophe, love and desire, all while celebrating the persistent and ever-changing self and envisioning beautiful Black futures. And then it tells me, so just by reading that, I recall why I was interested in this book. I think about the fact that most of the stories identify the main character through their profession or through their talent. I like stories that revolve around what people do for work. So that's interesting to me. So I remember being excited about that. And I think about what I want to read for. So reading with purpose for me is about kind of connecting to what I want the character to show me, or what question do I have about the story that I'm going to encounter. So I read the back, and then of course, to try and continue to get myself excited about what I'm about to embark upon, I also read the names of some of the featured artists. So Trin Delaney, don't know that person. Francesca Akwasi. So I do know Francesca, and I read their Butter Honey Pig Bread, which was one of my favorite stories for, I think, 2021. So I'm excited about reading something else from Francesca. Whitney French, I just finished reading Syncopation by Whitney French, so I get excited because here's another opportunity to be in their world. Aline Mwezi Nyonsenga, I don't know that person. Chimendum Ohegbu, I know Chimmy, and I think I've read one story by her and I really enjoyed it. Sui Davies Okunboa, I've read some of their work and excited to get back into it. Chinelo Onualu, I've met, and I don't know that I've read any of their work, but I'm excited to read it because they're very nice and super smart. Lou Palmer, I've met, haven't read any of their work. Therese Mason-Pierre, I've met and I know and have read some of her work. And then Zalika Reid Benta. Zalika Reid Benta wrote, oh my gosh, all I can think of right now is Drake. It's set in Toronto. Oh, it's gonna bug me. But it is I can just look. It has to do with like a water goddess in Toronto, and the name of her book just escaped me. River Mama, right? So I read that, I enjoyed it, so I want to read more. So right now, I know that there's a mix of writers I know and whose work I'm excited to get back into. I start to think about their writing style. I get a little bit excited. And then there's also the discovery element, right? I get to discover some new writers. So that's the next thing that I do. I look at the cover, I look at the back, I read the marketing blurb here. I start generating some questions in my mind that I want to explore while reading. And then I read the contributors and just start to think about who I know. And then I go back to their work in my mind, right? So when I read Syncopation by Whitney French, what did I think about it? What did I like about that work? What am I hoping to see, right? So for me, reading with purpose is also like engaging my thoughts, engaging my emotions, getting ready, getting excited. It's kind of like putting on makeup because you're going out, right? Or putting on makeup because you're going to be recording content. Like you're building up that anticipation before you even start. And that for me, some of you might be listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I just open the book and start reading, which is totally great. But I am a pretty cerebral person. I have lots of thoughts all the time, and it helps me to get into reading when I do it like this. Okay, so I haven't even opened the book. Now that I have, I also look at the blurbs to see, is there anybody I know who said nice things about this book? And if so, what have they said? And then I continue to get excited. Okay, after I go through the cover, then the more I go through this, I'm just like, this is a lot. But anyway, the next thing that I do is I go to the table of contents and I look at how many stories there are. So I literally count the number of stories, right? So I think there are 10 stories in here. And I just note for myself that there are 10 stories. That's it, right? It gives me a sense of how long it's going to take to read the book. I start to think about whether or not I want to rate them or rank them, right? So I look at the amount of stories there are. Now, not everybody does this, but I love reading introductions. So I read the table of contents and then I read the introduction. Now, when I read the introduction of a collection, right? This one was obviously written by Therese Mason-Pierre. So when I'm going through the introduction, I'm reading it with purpose. I want to know what the editor was trying to accomplish. Okay? As the Earth dreams, what does that mean? What was Therese trying to accomplish by bringing these stories together? Because it's going to help me it's going to help me read with purpose, right? To know her purpose in selecting these stories, ordering them the way that she did, and selecting them for this anthology at this particular moment, right? So I read the introduction and I highlight passages that I think are important, because I know that at some point I'm going to create some content and I want to remind myself. So in the introduction, this is what I highlighted. Nowadays, how can we unpack the speculative within the historical and political project of Canadian literature, right? So how do we unpack the speculative? That's kind of interesting to me. And then also, what is the historical and political project of Canadian literature? That's got me thinking, right? Then Therese also explains, because you'll remember my question was, what does As the Earth Dreams mean? What does that title, what is it supposed to invoke? The title, As the Earth Dreams, centers the idea of limitless imagination, particularly for Black writers in speculative fiction. What worlds and futures can we experiment with and speculate on? So now I'm like, okay, that's really cool. I'm expecting that each of the stories is going to answer that question in a specific way. And before I even get into the stories, I can ask myself, what worlds and futures can I experiment with and speculate on? What am I experiencing around me in this particular moment that I can speculate on? So here's some things that I can speculate on in this moment. Number one, FIFA is in Toronto. I remember when I read The Galaxy Game by Dr. Karen Lord, there were passages in that story that were about the political power of sport, not necessarily because of the sport itself, but because sport is one of those things, right? Sports events are things that bring large numbers of people together in one space with a singular goal, right? Or a singular set of goals. And that there aren't a lot of things in human life that bring a lot of people together across the planet. And sport is definitely one of those things. Whether you like sport or not, whether you're athletic or not, you have to respect its magnetism, the economics of sport, the politics of sport, the sociology of sport, the psychology of sport. That brings people together. And so with FIFA in Toronto, I'm thinking about, like, what does it mean to have all of these people here to watch this sport? And how do people gather, and how can this be leveraged to address some of the challenges that we're dealing with right now, right? Who's trying to control sport? Like, what if sport were different? What if it didn't cost thousands of dollars to see a game, right? Why is it so expensive? Who gets to control that, right? So those kinds of questions, right? And of course, as a Black queer person, I think a lot about the fact of, like, the Black bodies who are engaged in sport, how they are treated, how they are received. So that's just something I speculate on. And so I'm expecting that these stories are similarly going to pick up themes that are specific to Toronto, to Ontario, to Canada, and speculate upon them. And what are some of the themes that I would think that are uniquely Canadian? Maybe immigration, maybe Indigenous rights, maybe the notion of place, right? Maybe our relationship with the United States, maybe housing, right? Access to housing, access to water, right? These kinds of things. And when I say uniquely Canadian, I'm not saying that these issues don't exist elsewhere. It's more that these are Canadian preoccupations for Black folks, right? Okay, so then I highlighted this part, if you can see that. Okay, so the stories in this anthology explore living and dead relationships, ancestry and inheritance, love and desire, natural and urban landscapes, labor and leisure, secrets and truths. They step into future and memory, speculate on and through societies foreign and familiar, but never stray from deeply human relationships with self and others. Okay, haunting. So remember, it said a groundbreaking anthology of haunting stories, right? So now, haunting is an apt descriptor for many of the stories, while some also celebrate connection, healing, and life. So I think that some of the best introductions, right, help us enter the collection, right? Because sometimes collections just feel like a random assortment of stories. I think the best collections, in my view, have a through line that you can detect. So even though the writers are different and the stories are different, there's something that connects them all together. And so there's a meta story that's being told. And then finally, we have The Loving Send-Off, which is, I hope that readers enjoy these stories as much as I have and venture into their own speculation, choosing work and worlds that reframe reality, reflect the internal, and hold space for dreaming. So, you know, a nice introduction to the collection. So I wrote down some things, and I actually didn't look at these notes before I started, but this is an important part of reading for me, is taking notes. So I wrote down uniquely Canadian ? What is the story of the anthology? So the story of the stories. So Therese telling us why these stories all came together the way it did. That gives us something to anchor with as we read. What do we need to speculate about now? And why do we need the speculative right now in this moment? I've asked myself. And then I wrote speculative. How does it challenge power? How do we, like, what is necessary to call a story speculative? So those are some of the things that I wrote down in the introduction. So now, right, I've taken you through looking at the cover, the table of contents, reading the introduction, and writing notes to sort of enter into the story. All right. So I'm just going to pause here, and I'd love for you to tell me what you think about this so far. So when I get into the stories, I go back to the table of contents, which I use as a bit of a checklist, and I start reading. So the first story here was Ravenous, called Iffy, by Chimidum Ohegbu. I'm sorry, Chimi, I said your name wrong. And so while I'm reading the story, I annotate. So I highlight passages that are interesting. So if I like the writing in a particular passage, I'll use 3 dots. If I have a musing, I'll write the musing in the margin. And then if I want to sort of come back to a plot point, I'll highlight it. Okay, can you see that? Nope. I hope you can. I'll highlight it. Okay. So I will do that for each of the stories. I'll identify the writing that I like. I will highlight the passages that are interesting that I want to remember. And then I'll write notes or questions. This is a really good example. I'll write notes or questions in the margin. If there's a whole paragraph that I want to, that kind of stands on its own or that takes on a particular form that I find interesting, I'll put it inside of a square and write something about it and then come back to it. And sometimes, because I keep a journal / planner, sometimes if there are themes that I am going through in my own life, I'll write it down as well. So I wrote here, grief thickens, right? So I'm like, okay, let me come back to this idea of grief being thick, right? Okay, so once I finish reading the story, then I'm just going to the end of this story. There was a lot, I loved it. I thought that the meaning of the story included the fact that this character was ravenous for her mother. Like, I felt that the character in this story really wanted to have a very specific experience of being a daughter to her mother, and I wrote that down because that was important to me when I read it. So I finished the first story. I pause after I finish a story. I reflect on how I felt reading it. I reflect on the themes. I go back and think about what, like how the collection was described. And then I rate each of the stories based on not like the 7 calories. Like, I do use 7 calories, but I rate it based on my first thoughts. Okay, so I will put the, like, in the contents, I'll actually put markings beside each story to just like capture my thoughts for each of the stories. And the reason I do that in part is because as I go through the stories, like, I will forget, like, even though I've been reading this book for the past few weeks, I'll forget the stories, right? And I'll forget how I feel about them unless I actually go back and flip through the pages and remind myself. And so because I know that I'll likely create some content about what I'm reading, I will rate the stories in the table of contents. So I'll put some markings just to remember how I felt about each of the stories. And the cool thing about that is that by the end of the book, I can go back to the table of contents and just take an average and then say, okay, the average was like 6 calories for this. I really liked this anthology. And so I do that as I go through the book. So if you take a look at this, I hope you can see. There are a fair amount of annotations, different colors. I haven't put any tabs together or anything like that, but I'm in the last sort of lap of this book. The other thing that I do is, because when we get to the end, usually in a collection, you will have a section called About the Contributors, right? And I love reading bios of people, right? I find bios extremely difficult to write, but I love reading them. So after I read each story, I go to the back and I read the bio of the person I just read the story of, and I will highlight their name as a way to just remind myself that I've read their work. And that helps me, it helps me sort of stay connected to the collection. And sometimes reading the bio right after, I just start thinking about what I just read. And sometimes there's more meaning because sometimes the bio of a contributor will identify themes that they like to write about. So I remember after I read Butter Honey Pig Bread by Francesca Ekwasi, I read her bio and I saw that in her bio, it said like Francesca's work surrounds themes of, and then I don't remember all the themes, but one theme was consumption, right? And I was like, consumption? I have never heard that before. I've never heard of a Black speculative writer, or any writer for that matter, identifying consumption as one of the themes of their work. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then when I read Francesca's story in here, consumption came up as a theme within the story. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a through line and I remember this. And what do I feel about, you know, the theme of consumption? Why should it matter, right? So yes, so I go through the bios. I find the bio of the person who wrote the short story that I just read. I highlight it, and then if there's anything in the bio that connects to what the story that I just read, I'll go back and I'll enter a note about it. And then once I have finished the entire collection, right? I haven't finished this one, so I haven't done this yet. I will go back and I will write either in, I got this one signed, right? But I will write somewhere on the inside page, like one of the blank pages, or at the end, some overall thoughts, probably over here, some overall thoughts about the collection. Like, what did I like about it? I might even go back to what I highlighted in the introduction and see if the questions that it said that it would answer were actually answered, right? I might write down some of my favorite stories or neutral stories or least favorite stories, so that I can just remind myself of what the reading experience was like, so that when I eventually make content, or if I want to recommend this story to someone, I've got some memory of what the experience was like. And then when I'm done, I put it into Storygraph and I put it away and probably promptly forget about it because my memory is a magical place until I pull it back again. So sometimes I will go back and bedazzle and tab and all of those things, but that depends on my reading mood and my time and so on. So that is how I approach reading short story collections and anthologies. So if you've made it this far, I would love to hear what you think of this process. Is it the same as you? It'd be nice to know that I've got some reading kin out there who approach things the same way. I haven't really, as I said, made a video about this before, so I would love to know just what you think. I mean, I think I'm a little bit nervous about that because I think some of you might think this is a lot, and Jerry, I just read. I just read, like it's not that deep. And some might be like, this is amazing. So what do you think of this process? What do you think? I would like to know. Okay, now I don't want to leave you without some recommendations. This is not going to be a full recommendation list, but I do want to share with you 2 additional anthologies or collections that I have recently picked up. So of course, the main one that I wanted to talk about today was As the Earth Dreams, a collection of Black Canadian speculative stories published in 2025 and edited by Therese Mason-Pierre. So that, I hope you know that by choosing this book to talk about how I approach short story collections, this book actually inspired this video. That should tell you that I like it. I enjoyed it. I would absolutely recommend this. Please go out and buy it and explore the stories. Some really wonderful stories here. And then I want to, well, maybe I'm not recommending these because from an integrity perspective, I don't recommend books I haven't read yet, which should be a whole video, given that sometimes booktubers be trifling. So I do want to just tell you about 2 books that I have added to my collection that I'm excited to read, and I will tell you why. Okay, so the first one is Afrofuturism short stories. Okay, Afrofuturism short stories. And if you should recognize this aesthetic, okay, because this is Flame Tree Press. And I don't know if all of their books look like this, but many of them do. I have another collection. Let me get it. It's right here. I hope I don't drop things, but I have another one here as well. So this is Black Sci-Fi short stories, right? So their collections look very cool, right? Okay. So this one, Black Sci-Fi short stories, I guess I have 3 more to talk to you about. I purchased this in October 2021. And the forward here was by Temi O. And I haven't read, Temi O wrote I Dream of Theta 1. Somebody here must have read that, so you can put it in like I Dream Terra 2, We Dream of Terra 2, or Dreaming of, or I Dream of Terra 2. Anyway, I haven't read it. I need to read it. So this one is an anthology of new and classic tales with the foreword by Temi O. And as you can see, lots and lots of stories with the foreword by Temi O, right? And then this one is more recent. I want to say it came out in 2025, but maybe it even came out in 2026. Let me not embarrass myself. So this came out in 2025. It is Afrofuturism short stories, anthology of new and classic tales, forward by the amazing Nisi Shawl. Nisi Shawl has, if you're new to Afrofuturism and Black speculative writing and you want to know like what you should read, Nisi Shawl has been for years working on like a list of books and articles that is free. It's like a self-led course in Black speculative and Afrofuturism if you're interested in that. That's who did the foreword. The introduction is by Dr. Sandra M. Grayson, who I will admit is a new name for me. And I'm excited about reading this person's work. Just looking at the introduction, we have speculative responses to the color line, beyond legal segregation, colonized futures, the past informs the future. And I'm seeing, you probably won't be able to see this just by looking at it, but this feels like an academic paper with a lot of references to, a lot of references to stories and writing from across the ages. I'm seeing 1968, 1953, just looking at the years referenced here, 1961, 1996. So it looks like, for those who have like a more, perhaps like an academic research type approach, introductions can often be, especially with larger anthologies like this, introductions can be great sources of more material, especially if you want to read like backlist books. And then the contributing editor to this is Isis Asari, and there is a piece of writing by Isis as well as the contributing editor's note right here, and then there's the publisher's note. So I think like when you approach a collection like this, obviously this one is much longer than the one that I was just talking about, you might want to take a different approach. Like I know something like this would probably take me 3 months to go through because I read very slowly, but I think that my process would be pretty similar, but because I know that there are probably well over 20 stories in here, I would probably need to use some other measure, like some other kind of note-taking practice, because and definitely tabs, because I would likely forget. Okay, so the last recommendation I want to give you is a different kind of anthology. So some anthologies are, the stories are connected to each other by the sort of like the identities of the people who have written them, like Black Canadian speculative stories. All of the writers here have some relationship to Canada. Most of them, I would assume, identify as Canadian. These collections are collections of the type of stories, so Afrofuturism short stories and Black sci-fi short stories. So that's what connects the writers to each other. But sometimes you'll find anthologies that are that revolve around a theme as opposed to the identity of the writers themselves. And this is what attracted me to this collection. So this is We Will Rise Again: Speculative Stories and Essays on Protest, Resistance, and Hope. Protest, Resistance, and Hope. Ooh, there you go. We Will Rise Again: Speculative Stories on Protest, Resistance, and Hope. And you will see that it was edited by Karen Lord, Annalee Newitz, and Malka Older. Now, I found out about this book because I follow Dr. Karen Lord's work. I've read all of her books now, and there will be a surprise related to Dr. Karen Lord later this year. But I found about We Will Rise Again, I think, through Dr. Karen Lord. And so this is not a collection of only Black writers. And when I look through this collection, I'm just like, okay, there are some people I know here. Like the introduction is a discussion with Adrienne Marie Brown and Walida Imarisha. And of course, Adrienne Marie Brown and Walida Imarisha were the co-editors of Octavia's Brood, which, okay, so yeah, so they edited Octavia's Brood, right? This is science fiction stories from social justice movements. So this came out, I want to say, I don't know, 2015. So this came out in 2015. And the editors of this collection, which was a phenomenal collection, and in fact, the way that I think what Adrienne Marie Brown and Walida Imarisha did is that they got together a group of people to write these stories. Some were established writers, some had never written anything before. And I think they did writing workshops and stuff to help them get the stories through. And so they created this amazing work inspired by Octavia E. Butler. And then what we have is 10 years later, we have We Will Rise Again, and the editors of this collection are the authors of the introduction of this collection, which I think is really important, right? That you've got social justice movement collection here inspired by Octavia Butler, and then you have speculative stories and essays on protest, resistance, and hope. There's a conversation between these two that are happening. I definitely recommend this. I haven't read this yet, but I expect to like it. But these two collections are in conversation, right? And so what else I want to say about this? So much. I'd forgotten that Adrienne Marie Brown and Walida Imarisha wrote the introduction, but I think it's so cool that they did. So, of course, I scan the contents to see which Black speculative writers are in here whose names I recognize. There are a few. There's Nisi Shawl, and there is N.K. Jemisin, and I haven't read any N.K. Jemisin for a while. And I'm sure there are others, but those are the two names that I recognize. So I know that Tobias Buckell is from the Caribbean, and Karen Lord, they seem to have written something together as well. So this is one that I'm excited about too. So I will say that I think I'm at the end of this video. If you have, if you've watched this video all the way to the end, thank you very much for doing so. And if I divide this into two parts, thank you for watching both parts of the video. I would love to know how you approach reading short story collections. If anything resonated with you, I'm also happy to answer any questions you might have. And of course, if you have recommendations for Black speculative short story anthologies or collections, I would love to hear what you've got to say about them. All right, everyone, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, and please have like a stack of books and a ruler emoji. Is there a ruler? There must be a ruler emoji, or some kind of like measuring apparatus. I don't know why. I think because I'm talking about assessment and measurement in a way. Right? So something that has to do with like assessment and measurement, like a mathematical, scientific way to approach reading. I would love to see that in the comments. And speaking of comments, I love when you leave them. If you're not sure what to leave in the comments, please just leave like a, you can write watching, I'm watching, or like hello, or tell me what you're currently reading. It can be anything. I really enjoy engaging with you. All right, my friends, thank you very much for watching. Remember always to read with purpose, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.